Welcome to the Skills for Secondary School Success 4S Curriculum Professional Development Session on Unit 4, Interacting with Others as We Learn Together. In this session, we will learn about the key activities in each lesson for Unit 4. There will also be opportunities for you to think about how you would teach these lessons with your specific students. It will be helpful to have your copy of the teacher's manual so you can follow along in a hard copy of the text as we proceed through this PD session. We will conclude with more time for reflection and discussion as we think about starting Unit 4 with students. Like in the PD sessions for the orientation and Units 1, 2, and 3, we will begin our time together with a reflection as if we are in a connection circle. Unit 4 is when we will actually introduce and practice connection circles with students for the first time. Connection circles give people an opportunity to speak from the heart, their truth, their experiences, and their perspectives. It is also a chance for people to practice listening from the heart and let go of any stories that make it hard to truly hear others. Successful connection circles will take the kind of trust that hopefully has been built in your classroom throughout the first 3 units of practicing the 4S program. Although we will not be in a circle with other people today, it will still be helpful to reflect and experience the kind of reflection that will be at the heart of connection circles in your class. So take a minute to think about one new thing you tried this week in your teaching and how it went. Jot this down on a piece of paper or share this with someone near you if someone is available. Consider one or both of the following questions. How did students respond to lessons about managing learning through organization, note-taking, and outlining? Are there any questions or reflections that have surfaced for you concerning Unit 3 that you would like to explore further? Feel free to jot your ideas on a piece of paper or just hold your thoughts in your mind as you proceed through the rest of this session. Throughout the many reflection slides that we have in this presentation, please feel free to pause the video and think further about these ideas before you move on. In this section of the PD, we will provide an orientation of the structure for Unit 4, interacting with others as we learn together. Then we will review each of the 8 lessons in the unit. It is important to introduce students to the Unit 4 essential question during the first lesson and remind students frequently of this question throughout the unit. How do we co-create a classroom and school community where learning is engaging and liberating for all? How might you respond to this question for yourself? Take a couple of minutes to jot down some thoughts or just hold your ideas in your mind as you continue with this session. Now, this section reviews the main activities for each of the lessons in Unit 4. As you learn about these lessons, keep your students in mind and how they may react to each of these lessons. Consider the following questions and jot down your ideas as we proceed. What are the key points I need to remember about this lesson for when I teach it? What else might I need to know to deliver this lesson? What issues could arise that I need to plan for in advance? Keep in mind that much more detailed information on all the lessons are available in the teacher's manual. The title of Lesson 1 is Connection Circles to Build Community and Deepen Relationships. The main learning objective for the first lesson in Unit 4 is to help students understand what connection circles are and how they help to deepen relationships, as well as how their unique and diverse identities enrich the classroom community. To reach this objective, students will engage in 2 main activities. For the first activity of Lesson 1, you will need to prepare a few things in advance. First, you will pre-select one of 2 videos to share with your students to introduce the purpose of connection circles. You will also select a physical object with some personal meaning to you to be what is called a talking piece. Before either of the activities begin, the students will complete an identity chart as their Do Now activity. During the lesson, you will show the video you selected to your class. After the video, you will gather your students together in a circle to talk about the power of circles. In launching your first connection circle, you will also introduce the talking piece and why it is important to you. During the circle, the talking piece will be held by the person who is talking. Only the person holding the talking piece may speak in the circle. The talking piece should move naturally around the circle as different people share. In the second activity of Lesson 1, students will participate in a connection circle using the identity charts they completed during the introductory Do Now portion of the lesson. The students will rely on their charts to answer one of 2 prompts. Number 1, share something people do not know about you. Or 2, share a fact from your identity chart that might surprise others. As students share, they should remember to pass the talking piece to the new speaker. After the lesson, students will add their identity charts to a community wall. This is a space you designate to display the students' identity charts, as well as identity-related vocabulary words that you or the students would like to highlight to help support the building of collective compassion and understanding in the classroom. The title of Lesson 2 is Building Community Through Gratitude. The main learning objective for the second lesson in Unit 4 is to teach students to understand the power and importance of gratitude. To reach this objective, students will engage in 2 main activities. In the first activity of Lesson 2, you will divide the students into groups of 3. Each group will decide on one person in the school for whom they will create a gratitude poster, then work together on this creation. Posters should include the name of the person, a quote that the person says, 3 words to describe the person, an image or symbol that represents the person, 3 things the group appreciates about this person, how this person makes others feel, or how they contribute positively to the community. At the end of the activity, groups will share their poster with the rest of the class and decide when and how they will present their poster to their special person. In the second activity of Lesson 2, students will begin writing in their gratitude journals. These are journals that students can use on a weekly basis to keep track of things they are grateful for. You can decide which formats are acceptable in your class for the gratitude journals, but handouts with prompts are available in the Student Materials section for Unit 4 in this Google Classroom. The title of Lesson 3 in Unit 4 is Friendship. The main learning objective for the third lesson in Unit 4 is to guide students in exploring the qualities needed for positive friendships, including opinions they hold in common with others and differences of opinion. To reach this objective, students will engage in one main activity. Before this activity, students will complete a do now in which they list the top 5 qualities they value in a friend. For this activity, you will divide the students into teams of 3 or 4. Students will work within these teams to create an advertisement for a friend. The advertisement can be in the format of a poster, video, poem, Twitter post, or other appropriate ideas teams might suggest. Teams will first collaboratively decide on the group's top 5 valued qualities in a friend, then spend 10 minutes creating their advertisement and 2 minutes per team sharing their advertisement with the whole class for feedback. Although this timing is suggested in the teacher's manual, you can adjust the timing of components in this lesson based on what you predict will be most important for your class. The title of Lesson 4 in Unit 4 is Effective Communication. The main learning objective for the 4th lesson in Unit 4 is to identify the elements of active listening and practice the skill and learn how to use I messages to share feelings without escalating conflict. To reach this objective, students will engage in 2 main activities. In the first activity, you will perform 2 different role-play skits with a student volunteer. In one of the role plays, you will portray a poor listener. In the other role play, you will portray an attentive listener. The rest of the class will watch and listen to the role plays, then engage in a whole class discussion about their ideas about the scenarios. After this discussion, you will introduce the 4 F's. These are guidelines for how to exercise active listening: focus, feelings, facts, feedback. Students will then work in groups of 3 to practice active listening using the 4 F's. One student in the group will share something with their group, choosing from a list of possible conversation topics. The other students in the group will practice active listening. Then all students will rotate so every student gets a turn. In the second activity of Lesson 4, you will explain that I messages let others know how you feel without assigning blame to others. There are 3 parts to an I message. What I feel, this can sound like I feel. What happened? In other words, the behavior. This can sound like when you, the reason. This can sound like because. Students will then work in pairs to create 3 I messages in short skits. To finish this activity, students will then share their I message skits with the class and engage in a whole class discussion. Let's take some time to think about your reactions to these first 4 lessons. Please jot your thoughts down so you can refer to these ideas later. How familiar do you think your students will be with the ideas presented and discussed in these first 4 lessons? How do you think they will react to these lesson activities? Do you foresee any ways you can plan or prepare in advance to set your students up for success and take advantage of opportunities to improve student learning and engagement? The title of Lesson 5 in Unit 4 is Working Together. The main learning objective for the 5th lesson in Unit 4 is to help students identify attributes of a successful team and learn tips for working well with others. To reach this objective, students will engage in 2 main activities. In the first activity, students will read independently a hypothetical post-game interview. After reading, you will facilitate a whole class discussion to help the class discuss and identify the characteristics of a successful team. If you have additional time, you can use the 4 corners activity to help students think about how families, sports, businesses, and governments can be teams. As always, more details are provided in the teacher's manual. All handouts are also provided in the student materials section of Unit 4 in this Google Classroom. In the second activity of Lesson 5, students will again work in teams to decide on 3 ways to spend $500. After a few minutes, a spokesperson will share out the conclusions from each group. Then the class will move into a discussion about the process of working together on this activity. What worked well in your group? What did your group have problems with? How did your group agree on its final choices? At the conclusion of the discussion, the class will compile tips they can offer others about how to work with others successfully. They will then compare their tips with an article offering expert tips. The title of Lesson 6 in Unit 4 is Strengthening Emotional Health. The main learning objective for the 6th lesson in Unit 4 is to broaden students' vocabulary so that they can describe their emotions more accurately, help students learn to handle conflict constructively, and develop a self-care plan. As you learn about this lesson, consider whether you have seen instances of your students struggling to express their emotions and handle conflicts constructively. Also consider whether you have a self-care plan or routine that you use in your own daily life. The purpose of this lesson is to help students better understand their feelings and how to care for their mental health, enabling them to handle conflicts more constructively. To reach this objective, students will engage in 3 main activities. Before any of the activities, students will independently write down as many words as they can think of to describe feelings in 1 minute in the Do Now. Then, in the first activity of Lesson 6, students will work in teams to create a chart that stretches their emotional vocabulary. Team members will share the words they wrote down in the Do Now activity on a Post-it, eliminating any duplicates across students. They will stick these words on a team chart, then add as many additional words as they can think of, including slang words. Finally, students will group their Post-its into categories of feelings, then share their charts with the whole class. Then in the second activity of Lesson 6, students will return to their teams to brainstorm ways that they can disagree without being disagreeable. You can have teams share their charts and create a master chart for the whole class. After creating this chart, choose a student volunteer and role play with a student a conflict scenario. Model using the ideas in the T-chart for how to disagree productively. In the third and final activity of Lesson 6, you can begin by explaining that self-care can refer to actions or routines people can do to help cope with the challenges of daily life. Students should then fill in one box of the Give 1, Get 8 grid box pictured on this page with something they have done in the past to practice self-care. They will then move around the room, sharing their idea with other students. When they hear a new idea from another student, they can write this new idea into a different box on their grid. When most students have completed the squares of their grid, students can then reflect independently on all of the ideas on their paper and circle those they like the best. The activity concludes with students making a commitment to try some specific ideas from this grid in the future. The title of Lesson 7 in Unit 4 is Co-Creating a Caring Community, Part 1. The main learning objective for the 7th lesson in Unit 4 is to help students build empathy, acknowledge their role in community building, and establish actionable steps toward creating a caring community. To reach this objective, students will engage in 2 main activities. In the first activity in Lesson 7, students will work with a partner to think about times when they have experienced or witnessed empathy in action. The pairs will then record their ideas on an empathy T-chart. After pairs have had a chance to brainstorm their ideas, you can facilitate whole group sharing to contribute to a class-wide empathy T-chart that you can then display in the community wall space after the lesson. During this activity, help students understand the difference between sympathy, feeling sorry for someone, and empathy, understanding how someone feels by understanding their perspective. In the second activity in Lesson 7, students will partner read a text called Creating a Caring Community, Practice Empathy. After the reading, you can facilitate a whole group discussion focused on the following questions. Who is responsible for creating a caring classroom community? Is it the responsibility of just one person, or is it a collective effort? What kinds of behavior and interactions would we see and hear in a caring community? The title of Lesson 8 in Unit 4 is Co-Creating a Caring Community, Part 2. The main learning objective for the 8th lesson in Unit 4 is to help students connect with a partner using empathy interviews, understand how empathy is a part of the design thinking cycle, and help reimagine the classroom. To reach this objective, students will engage in 2 main activities. In the first activity of Lesson 8, students will engage in an empathy interview with a partner, practicing listening with an open mind. Each student will ask their partner to share a memorable classroom experience. The interviewer should ask why questions to explore their partner's perspective more deeply. They can use the prompts in the handout provided in the student materials section for Unit 4 in this Google Classroom as a support. Some of these prompts include, why does that experience stick in your mind? Could you tell me why that is important to you? As you recall the experience, what feelings or emotions do you have? What is something everyone could learn from your experience? Each student will have 5 minutes to share their experience. Then the partners will switch roles so that each person has a chance to conduct an interview and also to be interviewed. In the second activity of Lesson 8, you will facilitate a whole group debrief and discussion about students' experiences with the interviews. As students are discussing, you can help the class to create a class-wide empathy map. This map will be the basis of a collective agreement about one idea to test and refine in the classroom in the following week. Let's now take some time to think about your reactions to these last 4 lessons. Please jot your thoughts down so you can refer to these ideas later. What thoughts or questions are in your mind as you consider how to help your students interact with each other? Think about how you might continue to grow some of the practices from Unit 4 in your classroom moving forward. This concludes Unit 4, Interacting with Others as We Learn Together. Again, the teacher's manual, all the classroom materials, student activity sheets, and PowerPoint presentations are posted in the 4S Google Classroom. All the best as you teach Unit 4 in your classrooms. We will see you next time for the Professional Development Training Session for our last unit, Unit 5.